So, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to my summer series. Wow, I can't believe. Do you know what's really weird? That it's all been about the Euros, isn't it, for everybody? And I just want to get back to talking about Arsenal, Declan Rice, Bukayo Saka, Mikel Arteta. So that's what we're going to do. Well, one of my guests has just disappeared. Don't know where he's gone. Mr. Alan Algar. Welcome, Mr. Alan Algar. You were there a minute ago. There he is. Hello,
How we
Al.
doing?
How you doing?
Yeah, good to see you.
Good to see you too. One of my favourites. Not that you're not, Alan, but one of my
Oh,
favourites. I know, Mr. Anthony Gale. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for calling me one of your favourites, because I felt very outdone there by Al's entrance, how he just sort of came off and then came on. Looked very showbiz. So thanks for that. I appreciate it.
He's very, very showbiz as Al. Al,
Loved it.
I like to call the podcast. Well, I'm not going to say the other word that I'd normally say, but Alan, I love hearing you on other podcasts because you know what's funny about you? You just say the same thing. So it's not. I'm actually, honestly, Anne, driving along in my car when he's on Football-tastically Arsenal with Bosch,
Bosh.
Josh and Boyd. Sometimes he's on like a Tuesday, and I'll listen to it on a Tuesday morning or a Wednesday. Sorry, on Monday they record. And I sit there and I go, "That's my Alan." Here he goes about Erdegaard, and Josh always takes the Mickey like I do. So I'm looking forward to they coming back because they're off air, aren't they, at the moment, Al?
Yeah, they don't tend to do anything pre-season. Very much match by match focused, and I do one in every four with them, one in every five. So yeah, I enjoy it. I do enjoy it.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, really good. That's a really good podcast as well. I'd love to get Bosh and Joyce on here. That's it now. That's what I'm going to call them.
Yeah,
Um, I remember Jeff Arsenal coming on and they were like, "Whose podcast did you go on? How dare you leave us?" I said, "I feel like we need to combine and maybe all of us get together. It would be quite fun."
do you know what?
But
I didn't know it was limited where you could go because I think unless you host, I think you can go anywhere. I mean, I'll go anywhere that has me over time. So I enjoy it. I do enjoy it. You got to get
yeah,
different
no,
opinions out there and different audiences.
but do you know what though? It's really interesting because me, Chris, and James get asked on to lots of different pods, and we love doing it, especially rival fans pod. It's great. And during the season, I get asked to do the radio so much that I come across Tottenham fans, City fans, Newcastle fans. I'll never forget the Newcastle one. Do you remember that game last year, Al, with Gabriel being jumped all over? The ball was out, offside. The whole furor.
Could have
Uh,
cost us the title, that one.
I
Yeah.
think it probably sort of did. I was on the radio the next day, and I was livid. And the Newcastle fan was prodding me, and I was like, I took the bait. We came friendly on Twitter. Actually, it was a bit of a laugh in the end, but I think you get the juices flowing, ready for the Premier League season. But let's just go back to a little bit of the Euros. We need to talk about it. Obviously, there's been big news today that Gareth Southgate has walked away from the England job. I think that was like a dead cert. I, I'm not surprised by that. But Alan, just talk us through what you thought of the Euros.
Look, I'm like most people these days that if you're a regular match goer for your club, you will be club above country. Um, I didn't think that was really possible as a kid, but I suppose as a kid, you really savoured the times that the World Cup and the Euros came around, and it felt a little bit more special. And I'm just purely speaking from my own point of view now. I'm purely more Arsenal above England, and Arsenal defeats take a lot longer for me to get over than England defeats. So that's the position I'm coming from as an adult, as an older football fan. I do look forward to these tournaments though, because you're not just watching England, you're watching what's supposed to be the best in your continent, and obviously the alternate 2 years, you're watching what should be the best in the world. Um, it didn't live up to expectation. We all know that. There's been plenty said about the fact that a lot of the games were poor. In fact, the games I enjoyed the most outside of the England games were purely the games between the smaller nations in those games where they really had to go for it. You know, the third and fourth worst teams in each group battling it out for getting a good third place spot by winning at least one game. So look, I enjoyed a couple of those. I didn't really enjoy the most part of the tournament. But you watch the England games and it's purely about the result. It's not about the performance. Yet, Gareth Southgate somehow made it about the performances as well because of the style that he plays and the things that he does. I've read most of the tributes today, and there's not much criticism out there today. I think as a manager, there's probably 10 attributes you need to carry out, and he got 2 or 3 of them incredibly well versed. You know, 10 out of 10 on a few things, 9 out of 10 on a few others. But the really important things that turn you into a winning team, he was low scoring, and that's what always meant that he was just nearly there, and then not quite getting over the line. Now everyone can point to his record and definitely compare it to previous England managers that have been poor, especially with as good a teams at their disposal. But in reality, this team was good enough. We've seen them do it. We've seen them do it in exactly the club situations that they played for under great managers. Now, are these managers as great that you see in the Euros? Possibly not. You know, Martinez probably wouldn't get a job elsewhere, but he's managed 2 incredibly big nations already on his CV. Gareth Southgate, if he became available tomorrow, would he get massive jobs in the Premier League? He probably wouldn't. So look, that's what you're up against. And I just think he under-delivered with a good squad, and he's tactically lacking. And the setup cost a few players some big criticism. And I know Ant has got one of those to defend, and we'll be right behind him on that.
Okay, so yeah, I mean it's interesting, isn't it? I didn't enjoy the Euros this much as I normally did all the other competitions. I love the World Cup, I love the Euros. Gives us something to watch and during the summer months when we're all waiting for the Premier League to come back. But as a coach, because you are a football coach, do you watch it differently to a fan? I've always wondered that with you actually. Are you a fan or are you a football coach when you're watching football?
I think coaches will always will tell you whether they're obviously first team coaches, academy coaches. As a coach, as anyone in football, you're always learning. You can learn off the best, you can learn off the worst, but you know you've got to be receptive to learning. And you know, especially growing up with my father, it was always. I remember watching a game. I remember watching Italia '90. It was the first time I really got into football. I didn't like football until really the age of 6. And Dad sat me there for the whole tournament. I'll never forget Roger Miller, you know, Baggio. And I sat there and I watched it religiously and loved every minute of it. Loved it. And since then, I've followed the tournaments. I watch whatever football, if there's Spanish football on, if there's Italian football on, if there's German football on. It's you know, for me, it's about the learning. It's about learning of the different styles. You know, learning about the different tactics that the managers will display on the football pitch, and also just learning about these football players. And like Alan said, there's one that I've worked with and seen grow over his career in Declan and watched throughout the tournament, especially if there's boys that you have worked with and played a part in their development. You know, you're keen to see them do well, keen to see them grow, keen to see them improve as footballers, as human beings. And, you know, I think this tournament more than ever, there seems to have been so much media focus, so much on socials. Every time you hold on 1 second, there's a little bit of reception in my ear. Bear with me 2 seconds. Sorry, one second.
Yeah, sure, it's all right. I can talk to Al. The thing is, Al,
Yeah.
I love the.
There we go. I'm back. Sorry, excuse me. It was the volume, and I was getting really into it, and it was the volume of it. And you know, going back to it, there's so much focus now on the players and their performance, and we seem to be coming out as a nation and defending ourselves an awful lot, and the players defending the manager, the players defending the other players. And you could see it was affecting them. You could see it was affecting them as a group. And when it affects you as a group, like it does, I mean, there's a lot of criticism, you know, and there's a point, actually, I was speaking to Alan about this throughout the tournament, funny enough, you know, with our style of play and our methodology, because we got some very good football players. You know, you look across the board, you look at us from 1 to 11, you look at us from 12 to 16. We've got, you look at us from 16 to 24. The depth we've got, I think, is incredible as a nation. And the frustrating thing that got, I think, all of us was just the style and what these players do. It's like, let's say, for instance, you look at Declan, the way he performs for Arsenal week in, week out. Undoubtedly, he's been one of the best players in the Premier League this season. I don't think anyone would argue that with what he's done, with what he's offered Arsenal. But he's asked by the manager to deliver a specific style of play and how he plays. And he does that, and he delivers it to a T, and the Arsenal fans love him. England, he's asked by the manager to perform in a specific type of way, in a certain type of way. And he also delivers that to a T. So the different management styles, the players will always back their manager and play how their manager requires. And, you know, I've been hearing throughout the tournament about what he does on the ball and what he can't do on the ball. But what I'd love to hear is, do you know what? The boy's covered the most distance in the tournament. The amount of fires that he's had to put out, and so much of his development was playing as a centre half. So playing in that position, the instinct that he has to cut out, you know, put fires out before they get there, or nick balls, or, you know, the coverage of the ground that he covered. I think he had the most tackles, most coverage. You know, Al will be able to cover that more specifically than me because he knows the stats a lot better. But if you were to compare his distance in the respect of Bellingham or Mainu, what he covered in there, you know, but the big thing was, you know, Mainu made 96% of his passes, which was the best passing ratio in the whole of the tournament. How about what Declan offered us defensively? Because he was an absolute machine in there. He was a machine. With what he offered off the ball was fantastic. And he's not just played 6, 7, 8 games in that tournament, plus the other Premier League games. Yeah. You've never once heard Dec moan about tiredness or his legs or anything. He's just got on with it and he's performed. You never once hear he needs a rest. He doesn't. It was the same at West Ham. Played every game, every minute of every game. And, you know, won a European trophy at West Ham. He's been brilliant at Arsenal. I think for me, and this is another conversation, for me, he's the next England captain.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, obviously this is an Arsenal podcast, and obviously most of our viewers are Arsenal fans. But Kevin has a point. Declan Rice does not deserve any criticism thrown at him, played out of his best position by Southgate. Now,
yeah,
Al, do you agree with that? Or is that just an Arsenal fan being a protective like I am?
No, I think we'll all be protective. He's deserved that protection. He's given everything for us. We'll give everything for him. And I believe that I wouldn't say he's necessarily been played out of position, because if you think about the way Arteta used him last season, it was always to do with who else was available as to where Dec played. So if you had Jorginho available, Dec could get forward more. If you had Partey available, Dec could get forward more. When those two weren't available, he had to drop back a bit. So it was always to do with how the personnel lined up around him.
Mm.
But the good thing about Arsenal last season is they always played to the same style, regardless of where Dec had to be on the pitch, which meant he always had runners going past him from defence for an out ball. He always had people behind him ready to receive the ball, Saliba and Gabriel. And he also had incredible, incisive runs from players like Martinelli, Odegaard and Saka in front of him. Now, what hasn't happened, and why England have been so easy to scout, and why some people might think that Dec had a bad game in the final. I mean, look, it certainly wasn't one of his best games. And last season, I think he only had 3 bad games for Arsenal. If you could give me every player that did that over the course of a season, only had 3 bad games, you know, you'd just be so happy. I feel bad even only saying that, but I know he'll know in his head the 3 games I mean. If he listens to this,
let me tell you, the boy.
If Ant grasses me up later. But
No, the boy will, Al, let me just say, every game, his harshest critic is himself. So he will be the most honest young man in the respect of the way that he critiques himself, because he forever just wants to better himself. And the boy's attitude is off the scale, in that respect. So Al, he would probably name you them 3 games.
I bet he would. I bet he would. Look, his attitudes before we even got to know each other well. And I mean, I saw him around at West Ham. He was always the last to finish on any of the sort of kids' days. Always the last person to leave. Always the last person to leave all the fan engagement stuff. He made sure everybody got their 2-3 minutes, even if he'd been worked to the bone, as you said, playing all those games. So I know his attitude is absolutely impeccable. What wasn't impeccable was the system that was set up around him, and it set him up to fail once he faced those amazing players of Spain that realised that as long as they managed to block out the 3 balls that were potential balls forward for him, he only had the chance to go backwards. The sideways passes to the fullbacks were very rarely on. They're always on at Arsenal, always on. Ben White is tuned in every single time as to where Dec's going to be. The inverted left back is even tuned in to that diagonal backwards pass. He didn't have any of those options, and that's why he kept getting caught on the ball. He kept receiving hospital passes that he just wouldn't have got for Arsenal at all. And he got dispossessed on one, and it was a blatant foul. And you had England fans saying, "Oh, he's not strong enough." It drove me mad, and that's where I will definitely come out as Arsenal over England and make sure he gets that kind of respect. But look, he had a great tournament. He'll know that he didn't have the best game in the final, but he got there, and he'll be back there as well.
You know what I love about, I mean, look, and I'm sure you don't watch our podcast every week, but he ends up being like a Declan Rice loving every single game. I couldn't name you the 3 games that Al's talking about because I can't remember last week. And I can't remember 3 games that he was awful in. However, he's immense and we love him, and there's no doubt about that. But he's not playing with Arsenal players. Now, interestingly, obviously because Gareth Southgate's gone now, there may be the issue that Ben White might be coming back in. It all depends, doesn't it? Which then means Ben White, Declan Rice, Bukayo, you've got that sort of trilogy, as I call it, where he will have Ben White overlapping him. And I know what you mean, Al, where, he lost the ball, but he didn't actually lose the ball because the ball was so bad anyway in the first place.
Yeah.
But we do have Arsenal glasses on, and I do get that. But I did say to Cole last night, even if Declan Rice didn't play for us, and I know, Al, you've always championed him at West Ham. I know that. I sat there and said, I would have looked at Cole and gone, "Isn't it a shame we can't get Declan Rice at Arsenal?" I know I would be saying that because he's such a great player and a great human. I've never heard him moan. I've never seen him moan. I've never heard him moan. He's obviously been brought up in the right way. He feels like he's like a gentleman, like he's got manners. He gets on with the game, as Al said. He stays around for all the fan engagement. Honestly, and I think, like we spoke this time last year, and my first question to you was, what we're going to get for 105 million quid. You told us, and we got it. We absolutely got it, and some. I remember the first match or the second match he came out of the Emirates. He looked around like he was a kid in a sweatshirt. It was like this, and he was singing North London Forever, and he felt like he felt. How can I put it? Like in awe of being there. Where we're in awe of him. I don't know one Arsenal fan that doesn't rate him at all. And obviously great coaching as a youth team coach as you were. But before we go on to that, very, very, very remiss of me not to
Thanks
say
for
hello
pun.
to
Appreciate it.
I'll get to that. Not to say hello to everyone in the chat room. See, I'm so out of sorts. I've not done podcasts properly, football ones, for weeks. So hello to everyone in the chat room. Also, we're sponsored by Ruth Beckhart. Please go and check her stuff out. On the next show, which is next Monday evening, I have the Gay Gooners coming on. You're going to see some of Ruth's new stuff that I'll be uploading and showing you all. So please go and see ruthbeckart.com, big sponsor of our show. She's going to be sponsoring us all this season as well. Sorry, very remiss of me. I normally do this at the beginning. When I'm back to podcasting every week, it'll just flow. But tonight we are just talking, the Euros and stuff. So we know about, Declan. We will get onto his Arsenal career in a second, Anne. But I thought, I know what you mean about the social side of it. Look, Al and I come from an era where we went to football, we didn't have phones, social and media wouldn't have been put together in the same sentence. When your dad was playing, there was it was just football of the 80s. And that's what I watched week in, week out. And I look back to then and I think of all the situations we were in, winning our first trophy at Wembley, Tony Adams going to prison. The social media would have gone haywire. The fact that we won at Anfield in the last minute. I'm not mentioning this, Chris and James. These are my podcast brothers, but I'm just trying to say what would have happened. I went on the radio the week before that saying there's no point going to Anfield. We're not going to win. I was a stroppy teenager. But I'm just saying, I understand what you mean, Anne, about social media affecting it. Bukayo, obviously, as you know, 2 years ago when he got lambasted for missing the penalty, now becomes the hero because he scores against Switzerland and pulls us through to, the Netherlands. But we know, Al and I know what Bukayo is as a human. Another one that is the most incredible human. What a boy, what a player. And he did wasn't it our typical Arsenal goal he scored against Switzerland, and Spain had 2 players on him. He couldn't do it. He couldn't cut in at all, could he?
Well, the annoying thing for me is that in the first 20 minutes he was just up against Cucurella, and he did have the best of him. And this is what I mean about Southgate. 10 out of 10 on lots of things, but his in-game tactician and management side is very low, very, very low. It's probably only 3 or 4 out of 10.
Yeah,
and he didn't see that. First off, he didn't see that Bukayo had the run of Cucurella in the first 20 minutes, so then forcing our play down that side. And when he saw, because the Spain manager's seen that obviously Saka is getting the better of Cucurella, and he reacts and he makes sure that they double up. And from a minute about 25, they started to double up. And they also started to cut out that inside pass to him as well. So it meant he had to get those long passes down the wing, which are really hard to play off because people can obviously deflect it out and things like that. So then Southgate should have thought again, maybe even switch wings. I mean, he doesn't do things like that. And I think switching wingers is always a good thing. Lose your marker. We used to do it quite a lot at Arsenal, the early days of Arteta. We don't anymore because we've got a more settled style, and the players in behind the wingers can tend to run anywhere they like.
Yeah.
But little things like that he didn't do, and Saka, I almost got annoyed with the Saka thing because it was almost like people going, well, there you go. And I think he shouldn't have been abused 3 years ago anyway. Like, why are you now saying it's solved? It's not solved. It's still a problem that he was abused 3 years ago in my head. I don't think it's on the player to go, oh, well, I can score a penalty, so you should all like me now.
Yeah.
Because what happened to him 3 years ago wasn't football. That's nothing to do with it. So scoring a penalty doesn't solve those problems. It's a little bit like this with the praise that Southgate's getting today. He's like, oh, yeah, but he's been really wonderful because the United players now talk to the Liverpool players and the Chelsea players now talk to the Arsenal players. Well, that's not on him to do that. You're talking about stuff that's off the pitch. He doesn't need to be an ambassador in that respect. He doesn't. We expect the bare minimum you should expect from your manager that he's a nice person and he does things the right way and he doesn't believe in some horrible things and he's a good person. So that praise is sort of like the bare minimum I want. I don't mind an absolute arsehole like Jose Mourinho getting involved if England win, as long as he does stick to those other principles, which most managers do, even though. Well, yeah, but he does to a point, doesn't he? He does to a point. Like all the things that Southgate's getting praised for, like diversity and inclusiveness. Mourinho, I mean, he doesn't go against those things. He just does it in a totally different way. And as I'm saying now, the stuff Saka got criticised for, he should never have been criticised for. So scoring a penalty doesn't like mask that at all. We still got to remember that's what happened to him 3 years ago. And I just feel that people just conflate so many issues with the simplicity of football, and I think you've got to keep them completely separate. And we love Saka. We'll defend him to the end of the earth. And the goal that he scored, the assist from Rice, I typed it straight away. I said, "Gooners, that's a goal that we've seen many, many times."
Yeah.
And it was great for them to link up and for Rice to get the assist, Saka to get the goal, and Saka got assists as well and scored the penalty. I think Arsenal players can hold their heads high. And one very quick thing, and this will sort of chime with you, Anne. Aaron Ramsdale's not been mentioned because he didn't get one single minute at the Euros. But I went to the game against Slovenia, the probably the most boring game that there's ever been, the game in Cologne. And I
sorry, yeah.
Obviously, Ant is a fantastic coach, and he's been coaching my son, who's a goalkeeper. My son does like to watch the goalkeeper warm-ups, so he does go in and try and pay attention to those. So we did grab a beer or two, and then we went into the stand, because you can watch it in the stand. You watch the warm-ups with a beer, and Aaron Ramsdale's support of Jordan Pickford was impeccable. And then I thought all of the last season, where he just didn't moan or anything like that, this guy has gone from being top of the world, thinking that he's going to be England number one, certainly expecting that he's Arsenal number one, and his world has been shattered about this time last year. The way he has just held his head high and supported players is just unbelievable, and he needs massive, massive praise, because it will be overlooked in certain circles.
He was straight to Saka, wasn't he, when they lost? He was straight to Rice, and was wonderful to see. And he's like that. He supports Raya as well, the way he does with Pickford. I love Ramsdale, and I wish him well. But I just don't know if he's going to stay with us, Al. You just don't know. He's not going to get any games, is he? So
you can't see it. I mean, he's not even going to get the 2 he got last season because of Raya being a permanent
Brentford
fixture now, and Brentford not holding him as a loan player. So in that respect, he's getting 38 games, really, Raya, unless he gets injured. So if you said to Ramsdale, at the peak of your powers, you're going to be a League Cup and dead rubber European game player, possibly FA Cup, do you want to stay? It's 5-6 games maximum, I guess. And I don't think he should. I think we owe him that. If Arteta's made the decision, we all understand the decision now, don't we? I guess there's a few of us that didn't last year, including myself. So look, I really think that we've got to let him go. We've got to love him and let him go.
I agree. So, Anne, obviously, Declan's been a big part of your youth team, when you've coached him and stuff, and you've watched him go through West Ham, which obviously is your club. And then he left to come to us. And I just think that he's making great strides everywhere. I think as well, there may have been, I think sometimes England supporters, I'm club over country, never have been any different, never will be any different. If it meant Arsenal winning the league or England winning the World Cup, Arsenal winning the league, there's no doubt in my mind. I don't know what other people think about that, and I'm not interested. That's always been my thing. But it is important, I think, for the country to get the right manager now in, to get the best out of these players. And I will say this, I thought Luke Shaw played really well. And I'm not a Luke Shaw fan. His final ball wasn't great, but I actually thought he played defensively. I thought he played quite well, considering he's probably not 100% fit. But as a manager, who would you like to come in now, and to be manager of England?
I've been sort of waiting for this question, because I've just been absorbing, and as I say, myself and Alan have spoke numerous times throughout the tournament. But if we were to just look at the facts, right? And I don't say this to wind anyone up in the chat room. Manchester City won the Premier League. Arsenal finished second. Got Pep. You got Arteta. You got two fantastic managers there, both Spanish, both love to play the game. good progressive football, play forward when the opportunity presents itself, good to watch on the eye, fantastic pressing the ball, just enjoyable, just a pleasure to watch both sides. A fantastic advert for English football. Just great to watch.
Mm.
In that team, you got Saka, Stones, Walker, Rice, Foden. 5 of them players that play in the top 2 sides in the country. But for some reason, Foden's been getting stick. Rice has been getting stick. Kyle Walker's been getting it. Saka's been getting it. Don't get it with their clubs, do they? They don't get it with their clubs because they're producing. They're producing because they're playing a progressive way of playing football that's positive. Let's take the Spanish, for example. The Spanish, both their wide boys, Yamal and Williams, been getting a lot of good, but they're fabulous players, but they were getting the ball.
Yeah.
They're moving the ball, getting the ball when the opportunity presents itself, and they were told to be free and go and enjoy it. Go and be positive in 1v1 situations. Go and attack the opposing fullbacks. Go and make something happen. Look, if you give the ball away, go get the ball away. Go and get yourself back into shape if we can. If not, let's just go and get back after the ball again and get past and get progressively moving it. Now, you look at those 2 managers that play that type of football in England, and you look at that Spanish team. I could probably name you 4 or 5 better strikers than Morata. That for us, for England, straight away, Ollie Watkins, Ivan Toney, Harry Kane. I think Harry Kane's been carrying an injury throughout the tournament because Kane.
Come on to Harry Kane in a minute.
He's been brilliant for his country, but undoubtedly, I think he's carrying an injury, and I think it's quite clear to see on the eye he hasn't been the same Harry Kane that we're used to seeing. But with the players that we've got, we got a good side. We got a good side that are good to watch for their clubs. We've got a fantastic league, of which the top 4 is extremely exciting every year. There's been more goals in the Premier League this year than any other season. You're looking at 3-4 goals every game. Yet we go to a European Championship and we play with this methodology with a low block that, the statistics said against Denmark after we scored our first goal, how deep we then dropped. And it was frustrating to watch because it's frustrating to watch as a coach, as a manager, as a one-to-one developer, these players with all the ability in the world. I saw Foden against Holland in the first half. He was outstanding. He was brilliant. He was brilliant. He was getting on the ball. He was doing what he's doing. Him and Mainu, great. Undoubtedly one of the best combinations in the tournament when Mainu and Foden combined, and he then slipped it through the keeper's legs and he got cleared off the line. But it was exciting. Every English fan would have been watching that first half against Holland and thinking, do you know what? Brilliant. It's all right. And then when we got the late goal with Ollie Watkins, look, the first half performance deserved the victory against the Dutch. But with whatever route we decide to go down next, I would love to see it like a manager with a methodology that suits the England team that rolls into the Premier League, because we've got one of the best leagues in the world that every player wants to play in. Every player wants to be a part of it. Anyone would take a move, wouldn't they, to our Premier League and play under Pep and play under Arteta. So, I mean, the next manager to come in, I would love it to be a manager that gets the best out of these players that we've got and says, I kept hearing during the tournament, we're tired. We've had a lot of games. Well, I'll tell you what, we've got Cole Palmer sitting there. We've got Jared Bowen sitting there. We've got Gordon. We've got Gordon sitting there. We've got Ivan Toney sitting there. Walton didn't even get a game. Eze. You got Eze, who was one of the informed players at the end of the season, only getting a little opportunity here and there.
Anne,
You got Walton in midfield.
I want to ask you. So I just want to ask you, because you touched on it before. Why did he stick with Kane? Now, listen, everyone's going to know, we're not the best lovers of Kane on this channel. Of course not, for obvious reasons. But if he'd have stepped up and played well, I would be the first to say it. He was atrocious every game, and I did not understand. I'm not a football coach. I'm not a manager. I don't play FIFA. Don't do any of that. But we could all see Kane wasn't doing it and probably carrying a slight injury. Ivan Toney, Eze, Watkins, you had them. Why did he just die by the sword of playing Kane? He just literally just went, Harry. I said he'll drop Kane. He never did. So, and why has he stuck with him? You knew he had a slight injury. We could all see he wasn't playing well. And we want some excitement, Gerard. Absolutely, Bowen. You know, he comes on and it changes the game slightly. But I got frustrated, and I think that's my one thing of this tournament. Why did he just carry on playing Kane?
Al, me or you first on this one? I can see you're chomping at the bit down there, mate, to answer this one. I'm gonna pass the baton to you with
and
this,
then he
and
can
then
come
I'll
back
come in
to
after.
you.
Yeah,
I'll tell you why, because you can answer this theory I've got. So look, I think there's two things on Kane. You saw Portugal; it's almost written that they have to play Cristiano Ronaldo. Even when he was having stinkers, even when they get the ball forward, every single player is looking to pass to him. He seems to dominate that team. Now, luckily, Kane, for all his Tottenham faults that we've probably discussed on this channel, he's not that type of player. He's not the ego player that's going to say, I want the ball every single time. But unfortunately, somewhere, because he is the captain, Southgate has got this kind of moral attitude in his head that I've named him captain, he is our big star, and I have to play him. And if I play him, it's got to be at least an hour. And the only time he got that into his head was in the final.
Yeah.
If you noticed, as soon as he got to the hour mark, which is about the time you'd expect any sort of first choice player to get to before you said, right, you're coming off 2/3 of the game, that's exactly what happened. And he only got that clue right towards the end. Now, there have been some shocking, proven conspiracy theories about the FA in the past, that certain players with certain commercial deals were forced upon managers. So that's why Beckham was picked when he was injured before. You had Michael Owen being picked when he had his...
Al, sorry to interrupt you, but I've got something quite funny here. Dad's just tried to call me during the show, and I said, I'm online. And he said, oops, he said, send my regards to everyone.
Oh, bless him. Oh, love him.
But that's typical of Tony, really, because he always interrupts my flow, and as soon as I get to my big point, but you know,
he interrupted
I've only told him I've been on 9 till 10. I've told him probably 4 times today. It's 9 till 10. Yeah, but we love him.
We're going to get him on this show one day. I'm telling you, he's going to come on.
Definitely. Before the West Ham game this season, let's do it. But look, so there's an even stronger point. If it's not just Southgate morally saying that he's my captain, he's got to stay on to a certain point in the game, and he's hamstrung himself by doing so, because we all saw that he should have come off the pitch much sooner. He shouldn't have even started some of the games. But there's also, just lurking in the back of my mind, those conspiracy theories that were out there about England at major tournaments where big commercial deals have been done for certain players to be in the squad and play. And I just wonder if the hand of the FA was at play there, even in a small way, to say that Kane had to play, because it's happened before. People might think I'm talking nonsense. It's happened before. Other managers have come out and said, I believe it was Sven and Capello, that they had certain players forced upon them in certain situations because of commercial deals, even if those players weren't fit. So look, it could be that as well. I don't think Southgate's the kind of guy that would put up with that, but the fact he was captain is what's hamstrung him there.
On to me.
Tell me I'm talking nonsense, Sam.
Well, it would make sense.
The hesitation. It's me.
It would make sense a little bit, Al, because why did he just continue with him? Didn't make sense. He did pull him off in the final, didn't he? He got him subbed.
Exactly, on 60 minutes. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
60 minutes.
If you're a conspiracy theorist, maybe, but go on, Anne, because I'm not sure.
On looking at constructively as a coach, because one thing I don't want to be on here is criticise what Harry's done for his country, what a good footballer he is. He's had a great season in the Bundesliga, and I keep hearing from people, it's a farmers' league and this and that and whatever. And I just say to them, it's just a complete lack of disrespect when they have a go at the Bundesliga, because the teams in there this year and what they've done in I've seen Bayer Leverkusen, been fortunate enough to watch them live this year, and I watched them with Al, and they're a pleasure to watch on the eye. You got your Bayern Munichs, your Borussia Dortmunds that lost out in the final. Some good sides in there. So, firstly, and what Harry's done for his country has been outstanding. But with whatever manager comes in next, we have an array of talent of which, I've always been brought up where if you're performing, you keep your shirt. And we have players now that, regardless of any commercial right or regardless of anything, this is where I said with the wide players, you got, for instance, Jared Bowen sitting on the bench, right? Jared Bowen sat on the bench, played a low block pretty much all season with David Moyes, and his conversion rate to chances was exemplary. So if there's anything, he would have been ideal to come on in a scenario for England and produce and do something at this tournament. You got Anthony Gordon, that Cole Palmer should have been on the pitch earlier.
Yeah.
Regardless of whatever the reputation of these players when they put on an England shirt, it should be put aside and it should be performance alone. And unfortunately, Harry's performances have not been good enough in this tournament. And every game that Watkins has come on in, he's left an impression on not just the game that everyone can see visually, but you can see the other players are energised by when he presses the ball and gets after it. It gets us higher up the pitch. It gets us on the front foot with that energy. And I think that we were crying out for it. It's brilliant when he scored his goal against Holland, but it wasn't just that. It was the way he came on in games and what he done. It was a breath of fresh air. And I think when we go into this next era with whoever and whom it might be, we have to look beyond the size of a player and what they've achieved and who they are, and actually say, look, if you're performing, doesn't matter, captain, no captain, vice captain, you got to deal with Gillette, you got to deal with the English FA, whatever. You've got to perform in an England shirt, and you keep your shirt. And if you do that, then there's absolutely no reason why we can't lift the World Cup and the European Championships in years to come if we make the right appointment and look beyond size of player and character. It's got to be performance alone. I don't know if you guys agree, but that's what we cry out for. And Gareth had numerous opportunities to try things out before the tournament and do things and try different systems. And then during the system, now we're going to a back three all of a sudden. All of it just didn't sit right, did it? But we've got the players there on a positive spin. We've got the players there to for someone to pick up the reins and really give this a go now. But Watkins has got the nation's respect, and I think the next game, I think everyone will be calling for him to start in the number 9 shirt.
And so they should as well. And I absolutely believe if you're good enough, I don't care who you play for. And Harry Kane, I said to Cole that Southgate will walk away, and I think Harry Kane will retire from English football. Not English football, sorry, from the England team. And Cole said he won't. He's not old enough yet. He won't do it. He won't do it. I just think that the other players offer us more options. I was so bored watching him. At some stages, I forgot he was even on the pitch. And I know we are biased against him, and I do get that. And we're very pro Declan Rice and Saka and, Ramsdale. I get that as well. But we also like to watch good footballers. Watkins, Palmer. I was screaming for Palmer to come on, and then he does that. He assists Watkins in the most... I honestly, it's really strange because I really have a lot of respect for Gareth Southgate. Do I think it was time to go? Yes, I absolutely do. I also find that I don't know. Maybe there's a favouritism towards clubs. We don't know what went on with Ben White. He should definitely been at the World Cup. I'm for one happy that he's had a rest. I'm wondering how do you think that Saka and Declan are going to come back? They played the whole of last season. Bukayo did have a couple of games out. I don't think Declan did that many. And you know what? They're going away for a couple of weeks. They must be back in training. And we go again for another, 24-25 season.
Yeah, I think Dec played all bar in about 120 minutes of the 38 games, which is quite incredible. I think he only missed about 120 minutes. And as Ant said at the start, that's almost 4 or 5 seasons now where he's been first choice, hardly missed games, all the way through Premier League seasons. Become an England regular 3 years ago at the delayed Euros. a December World Cup, and then obviously what he's just done now. So, I mean, in reality, I really, really hope that they've said to both players, take 3 weeks off, take 3 whole weeks off with absolutely no football whatsoever. I mean, Saka's also been crying out for that as well. The thing is, there is a US tour starts sort of next week, the back end of next week.
Yeah.
I would hope that neither of those players actually touch foot on US soil and actually are waiting for the Emirates Cup, maybe the second game of the Emirates Cup.
Al, you know that point
to come in.
what we were talking about with myself and Al were talking about Rodri before the start of the tournament, and statistically just how many games he's been involved in. And Rodri's been involved in 81 games for club and country, and only lost 1 in the last 81, right?
Yeah.
Now, look at how many games Rodri's been involved in, how many games Declan has been involved in, not just in the last season, but the last 2 seasons internationally, within the Premier League, within the Champions League. Picking up, and I know it's slightly off point, but I just thought it was a nice way of going into something. But it's going to be very interesting to see how Pep and Arteta manage Dec and Rodri at the start of next season, because they have played a lot of football. 2 players that don't really moan about the amount of minutes, but they have played a lot of football without any moaning about tiredness, as I say, or stiffness. They want to both play in every game. And as I say, Rodri's statistic there, 81 games and 1 loss for his country and club. That's incredible, isn't
it? They're also in America next week as well, and again, you would think that the players that went deep into the Euros wouldn't be required by City to be anywhere near until it all starts again.
I don't think they are going out, because Carl said that Saka and Rice are not going to America. I don't know.
That is good. That is good.
That is good. But look at one of our. Thank you, Avon, for your comment. We've got a very aggressive start to the season with City, Tottenham and Villa all in the first 5 games. We'll need both Saka and Rice back pretty quickly. So the problem is, Anne, you can't rest them. We can't rest them against those games. That's going to be absolutely impossible to do that. I just hope Cole's right. They don't go to America. Agree with you, Al. They need rest. Don't even need to be here for the Emirates Cup. Just come back, just after the Emirates Cup. But the thing is, they're the sort of players that just want to play football every day, don't they? I can imagine Anne as a kid, Declan would have just been wanting to play constantly. And it's wonderful the amount of minutes he has given us. But just going on to this season as well, taking England out of it now, we're going to talk about Arsenal, talk about West Ham a little bit as well. What's your thoughts for the season, Al? Look, we've got a title to win. We've got. It's been 2 seasons that we've come so close. We were talking about the Newcastle game. There was 1 game in it in the end. I personally think it was the Villa game that we lost at home is when we lost it. I know that there were 2 games at Christmas, but we had time to make up for that. And to me, it was Villa at home that broke our hearts that, we didn't win the league. But it's a new season. Don't know any signings, because obviously I think it's all going to start now. We don't really know who's going out, who's coming in. We don't know if Ramsdale's staying. But what's your hopes? I know your hopes for the season, but what do you think's actually going to happen?
I think it's a really interesting season to put alongside the way that we felt this time last year. So that we got Dec. A lot of Arsenal fans didn't know if he was that good. They didn't. I mean, I obviously had some insight into that and was fully behind the signing. There's not going to be a big marquee signing like that. We know that. We know what the club are positioning themselves for. I'd expect cover in a couple of positions, and a lot of that will be to do with the departures. And my big one is I'd like to see Zinchenko go. I don't want to rely on him at all next season. I think that's where we need to make a few points. Urian Timber should be like a new signing, and that will be great. And let's hope that he goes more than 1 game into the season. But there's a really interesting thing at play next season, and that is that this time last year we were saying that it's great that we've competed the previous season, and this season we're up against City, and everyone else is in transition. We said it. We said that Liverpool had a poor season the previous season, which they had. We said that Tottenham had changed managers, which they had. We said that Chelsea weren't particularly settled, and we said that Ten Hag hadn't bedded in correctly at Man U. Now, the weird thing that's happened is you could say all four of those teams are still in a bit of transition. Those other teams we class as the big six. You got obviously Maresca going in at Chelsea, so they're in transition. You've got Slot going in at Liverpool, they're in transition. Ten Hag has only just been confirmed as the United manager after a whole season of ups and downs. And then you look at Tottenham, who, blew out completely at the end, with Postecoglou sort of saying that he's going to have to redesign the way that he adapts himself to managing a club with the expectation and the way that the fans have been. So it almost feels like Postecoglou's had to start back again because of all that, terrible stuff that was happening with the fans. I say terrible, we all enjoyed it, but from his point of view, he's had a massive knock towards the end of the season, thinking that he's making progress. And he's been told towards the end, you haven't made progress. The fans are still annoyed. So the beautiful thing is that we're in a more settled position again. And we didn't expect to be 2 seasons running, even 3 seasons running. And the only thing to aim at, in my head, is City. And there's got to be a point where we're just a bit luckier with our games. You mentioned the Newcastle game earlier. I like to mention the Fulham games because I feel the Fulham home game, I think Arteta tried to be too clever, and he very rarely does that, by the way. I'm not getting at him here. In 38 games, if you're only trying to be too clever, sort of 1.5 of them, we'll take that. It's a bit like Deck's poor games. You're going to have bad days at the office. They had very rare bad days at the office, but I think those were the things that cost us. But a little bit of luck was in there as well, and I think that luck could be with us. So I really think it's 2 teams at the top that are settled and going for it again. And I just think we're going to get a little bit better. And I think those other 4 teams are still in transition. And we got to get our hands on a trophy soon. But I think it's up for grabs next season.
I absolutely loved last season, and as an Arsenal fan, I loved it. Absolutely enjoyed it. Apart from the couple of games between Christmas and New Year and the Villa game. Well, as an Arsenal fan, that's incredible to say that a whole season there's only 2 or 3 games. The atmosphere was incredible. Obviously, Declan with us. Al's right. Timber played half a game. He's absolutely like a new signing. From a West Ham perspective, have you got a new manager yet? I've so not kept up with football this month, but the Premier League.
Yes,
Who's your new manager?
we certainly have. Al, could you help me with pronunciation, please? Because you're spot on. So the pronunciation I'm going to leave with Al, and then I'm going to go on.
Lopetegui, the ex-Wolves manager. Yeah.
Lopetegui?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, Lopetegui, what hope do you hold for him?
Well, the clubs that he's been at before, the good thing is he's played a back 3. I mean, when he's had the Seville job, Spain job, Wolves, he's already making inroads in the transfer market. Just signed Kilman from Wolves, which as well deserves big credit from Maidenhead in the National League, because Kilman played for one of Dad's good friends, Alan Devonshire, manages Maidenhead, and Kilman played for Maidenhead, and they get a percentage of the deal where he signed, which is, I mean, it's the best part of 40 million. Yeah. So Maidenhead could be picking up, you're looking at maybe £5-6 million there, which is fantastic for them as a football club to be picking up that type of money.
Unfortunately, they had to kiss goodbye to a little bit of it. I'm not up with conspiracy theories, but they got stitched up a bit. They were due 20%, which would have been near a 7 and a bit million. And they've accepted 4. I think someone's twisted their arm somewhere. But all credit to Dev, because, to pick players up like that and get great signing on fees and forward fees is brilliant. So 4 million would ensure that Maidenhead could probably go full time for 10 years off the back of that. So it's a great signing. He was great at Wolves last year. It's a great signing for West Ham as well. Sorry, Anne, go on.
No, that's fine, mate. Looking to switch, so he'll probably switch to a back three, which to me could be a positive outlook. He's looking at signing Wan-Bissaka, already signed the boy Luis Guilherme from Palmeiras in Brazil. So, he's made good inroads in the transfer market. He still needs to obviously make more signings before the start of the season. But I think as a West Ham fan, we're going to be seeing obviously a little bit more front foot attacking football, pressing football, which I think as a West Ham fan we've been craving for the last few seasons. And by the way, that is of no disrespect to David Moyes, because he's put a European trophy on the table and made us a top half side, which is huge credit to him. But I just think that, as I've mentioned before, being on this program and this podcast rather, it feels like a program. But it's the upbringing that I've been fortunate enough to have to watch the West Ham sides over the years. When you're watching your McAvenis, your Ray Stewarts, Paolo Di Canio, Alan Devonshire's, like we've had so many good footballers over the years. Joe Cole, Rio Ferdinand. I could go through all of them, but we're used to that type of football. And I think, with this appointment, it could be a real positive thing for the club. And it's one of which I'm looking forward to the start of the season and seeing how we start, because I don't think our signings will be over there. I think there's going to be much more dealings over the coming weeks in the transfer market.
Okay. Well, we got one of your fan club on called Hello Ella Southern. Hey, Anne, she wants to say
Hi,
hello
Ella.
to you.
Hiya. Very
Just
talented footballer, by the way. She's a young lady who's currently playing for AFC Wimbledon, training with AFC Wimbledon women. She's still 15 years of age, so
oh wow,
she's got a lot of talent. Worked with her 1-to-1. Good friends with her dad, Andrew Southern, as well. So it's a great family and great to see her doing well.
lovely. Keep going, Ella. Girl power, absolutely. Loving the girls' football. And so let's just talk a little bit about you and who you're coaching at the moment. Someone that we were talking about off air, you're coaching your mate Ruben in Love Island. So it's funny, isn't it? He needs to start talking about football and mention you on Love Island, then.
It's been a very interesting couple of weeks, because it's obviously you're watching the Euros on one side and you're watching Declan, and then switching over and putting Love Island on. I can hand on heart say I've never watched the programme, but I remember he came into training, Ruben, and I work with Ruben, and I do some 1-to-1 work with Ruben, and he won the league with Chertsey actually this year, who play in the Southern Isthmian South Central division, and Chertsey had a great season and he's been promoted, so he goes into step 3. He was a pro at AFC Wimbledon as well, so they're not really highlighting the football aspect.
No.
The football aspect of it, but I've worked with him. He suffered with a lot of injuries, but we worked closely together last pre-season. He managed to play 46 games this year without injury, which was great. And he spoke to me about this Love Island opportunity. It must have been 2 months ago. He sat me down in a coffee shop, and I thought, oh, what's happened? What's he doing? And he sat down and he said, I've been asked to go on Love Island. What do you think? And so
you should have phoned me. I'd have told him. I watch it all the time.
He takes his football extremely seriously. Very committed to his football. Big family man. As I said, once a pro, always a pro. So he's been a professional footballer, which hasn't been highlighted on the show. But any Love Island fans watching this, like, he's a genuinely lovely character, and what he's doing in there. I've only watched it twice, but so I have watched it. But he's genuine. He's really genuine.
I can imagine. He looks genuine, looks a lovely guy, and hopefully he'll be on this podcast very shortly once he's out of the villa. If people don't know you've watched Love Island, you won't even know what I'm talking about. Al, you fancy a bit of Love Island? Are you sort of a Love Island person?
No, but I tell you what, some of my most pleasurable Friday afternoons are when I take my son Matthew to go training with Anne, and the other boys are there, because he fosters this really good, I don't know, it's just a really good attitude between the boys, and they're all great lads. I don't think I've met this guy that's been on Love Island, Anne. Have I? Would I have met him?
Do you know what? Potentially,
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
I'm trying to think back. There would
Just
have been a
I'm
good
trying to think,
chance out.
but
It,
sometimes, and
he
let's
would have remembered your distribution and set plays though, Al. He would have remembered that.
this is it. Sometimes Ant lets me bring my boots and join in and deliver balls in, or just actually, I tell you what, most of the time I just get the balls from behind the goal and just I'm a ball boy. But
after I've demonstrated and put them
I
there.
can imagine you
exactly.
two.
But I can sort of fondly imagine some of the other lads I've met down there going on there because they're a great bunch and they're very funny, and we've had some very funny Friday afternoons while the boys are doing their hard work. So no, good luck to him. I haven't watched it for about 6-7 years, unfortunately.
Oh, I watch it all the time. I can't wait to watch it
Mm.
later, Anne. But you know what, boys? I can't believe it's been an hour. We've been discussing Euros, Arsenal, West Ham, obviously our Deckers. What I love to do with Anthony, everyone on the same old Arsenal, he comes on every 3 or 4 months with Al. And we have these conversations, and I just get lost in listening because I am absolutely crap at playing football. Always was as a kid. Honestly, I used to play rush goalie, if anyone knows what that means, when I was in primary school. I was, I haven't got, can't kick a ball, can't do
That
anything like
term
that.
does still exist, by the way,
Does
if that
it?
makes you
Oh,
feel.
it's
Yeah,
so
it still
funny.
exists.
Rush goalie. I was about 9 years old playing that. That was the only position they'd let me play was rush goalie because I was quite good in defence. But I'm really, it's really fantastic that you give us your time, and and obviously we know that you've got lots of fantastic footballers, and you never know, you may have another Declan Rice that comes to Arsenal, and another superstar like our boy Deckers, and we love him. So you two have been just brilliant guests as normal. Alan and I see, and you're not on Twitter, but Alan and I go at each other. You don't see all the fun we have during the season where I'll say something and Alan just disagrees, and it just all kicks off. It's
Well,
fabulous.
the weird thing is, you said to me, "I always agree with you on England," and I said, "No, that the reason is because you're not as emotional. And if you
No,
thought
you're.
about the Arsenal stuff with less emotion, you'd agree with me on that as well. I'm sure.
I'll
I'm
never agree with
absolutely
you on
sure."
certain things, and you know that. Martin Erdegaard for a start. But you know what? I am looking forward to the season. So the season starts, then I'm going to go off and get married. So that is quite an interesting.
Amazing.
I know. Thank
Oh,
you. And
congrats.
thank you. And we're on a cruise when Arsenal play City. Let me tell you, it'll be. I will. The first thing I'll do when I go on that cruise is check in where it's going to be, what time they're going to start showing it, and we will be having front seats. I cannot be on the high seas watching Arsenal Man City. Honestly, it's at City. Thank God, I'm not missing it at Arsenal. But yeah, no. So listen, guys, fantastic as always. And you know, in about I don't know 5-6 months, she'll be coming back on. We'll be talking about hopefully our wonderful Declan's, oh, touch wood, has been playing and lovely and all that. I love you two coming on. Thank you for your time. And as usual, Al, we'll get you back on talking Arsenal post game one time when you can, lower yourselves to come on with us when
No,
Josh and Boyd don't want you.
it's a pleasure, and I have an apology to make publicly to Chris
Oh,
Suburban Gooner because he sent me a message about coming on, and I thought it was about this show. So obviously, I've been corresponding with you, and he's been doing another show. I've just read the message properly, and he invited me on another show, the one-to-one shows that he does. So I'm going to respond to him with an apology, but I thought I'd make a public apology as
Oh,
well.
I'll tell him. So Chris's next show wonderfully led into there. One in, one out, one bangs. That's what he's been doing all summer with all
Yeah,
different guests. I think he's got Kaya Kayanak on this week with Melvin as well. So sorry, Chris, I don't know if it's tomorrow night or Thursday. I think it's this Thursday. But if you subscribe to us, you'll never miss a show and press the bell. You'll never miss a show. I'm back for my last summer series before it's my birthday the end of the month as well. Next Monday evening, I've got the Gay Gooners coming on, a couple of those, and I had them on last season. Such a brilliant chat. You're not going to want to miss that. Boys, thank you ever so much. Everyone in the chat room, remember to go and visit ruthbeckart.com. And I'll see you next Monday. But you know what? This season's going to be interesting for sure. Me and Ant are off to watch Love Island. Alan's not going to watch Love Island. So from
Don't tell
so from
everyone.
everyone knows now. So from everyone, so from me at the Same Old Arsenal podcast, from Anne and Al, good night, everyone. And remember, I haven't said this for a long time, always Arsenal. Good night, everyone.